Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're happy and well. Today I'm going to be talking about yet another thing that I care very much about, which is sustainable fashion. About 3 years ago there was this trend on YouTube for YouTubers to buy inexpensive prom dresses from eBay and subsequently Amazon and Wish and I don't know, any other cheap website that you can think of. And they would try them on to test whether or not they looked like the picture or not. And in the various videos, the YouTubers would say things that they didn't like about the dress, for example, its fit, that were fairly fixable. Here are some examples.
Okay, so this is the red dress, and I quite like it. I wish it was a bit more fitted around the waist. I feel like this could definitely go a bit tighter, give me a bit more of a figure. It's not
For $3, it's not bad at all. However, I really don't like the way it fits on my body. It doesn't complement anything. It just looks like a bit of materials being thrown over my body. It's not tight in any places. It's just basically loose everywhere, so it's just not fitted.
It is really pretty, but I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of room for stuff to happen. I don't have a bra on right now. Overall, I feel like this dress does look like the one that's in the photo, but like it's just kind of see-through.
Now don't get me wrong, I adore some of these YouTubers and I fully admit that I have watched many of these videos for my own entertainment, especially Jazzy Bum. She really fairly critiques all of the things that she gets and she's so enthusiastic, she's adorable. You should go and check her out. Anyway, the point is that I decided to take this idea and put my own little spin on it. So I went to the op shop and bought two dresses that I absolutely love, aside from a few things. The first dress I have is this white flowery dress. I absolutely love white vintagey looking dresses, which is why I decided to get it. There are, however, two main problems with it. The first is the plunging neckline. If I was more endowed in the chestal region, or perhaps more confident, maybe this wouldn't be such an issue. But I am neither of those things, and I like quite modest clothing. So that had to be addressed. The other issue was the gap at the front of the skirt. There isn't anything really wrong with it other than I don't really like having my legs on show. To address the neckline, I decided I'd put in something to make the neckline seem less deep. I happen to have a piece of curtain left from when I made that Edwardian blouse a couple of years ago. To start, I flipped the dress inside out and then measured from the top shoulder seam to where I wanted the top of the lace to sit. I did that on both sides so that they were definitely even and marked it with pins. Then I lined up the lace with those pins and pinned the lace in place. Try saying that 3 times fast. One problem I came across here was that the lace was quite see-through and not modest enough for me. So I put this piece of mesh behind the lace, leaving the pretty edge to be see-through, and that fixed that problem. I then pinned the mesh and the lace down and tried it on again just to be sure. Once I was happy with the placement, I rather unevenly sewed the lace and mesh in place by hand with an obvious coloured thread. This is just to replace the pins, so that bit doesn't matter too much. After it was definitely in place, I trimmed away the excess lace. Then I set to work sewing the lace to the dress. I tried to do that fancy thing you see on the internet, the stitches sort of disappear and it's all amazing, but I found that just doing normal little stitches by hand was definitely easier. After that was sewn with white thread, I pulled out the green thread because I didn't need it anymore. Now I was going to film how I ended up fixing that gap in the skirt thing, but it ended up being too confusing, so I thought I would just kind of tell you what I did because I didn't really understand it myself anyway. Originally I did consider pulling the skirt all the way over so that there was no gap at all, but then the skirt would look kind of funny and it would be awkward to walk in. So instead I took inspiration from this outfit that Melinda wore that one time in Ghost Whisperer, and I made myself some bloomers. Now I could have ordered some online, but I happened to have some bedsheet and some pattern, so I kind of just made it myself. So what I did was I found a pattern for pajama pants, cut it off at kind of calf length, and then put elastic about this far up from the hem of the thing so that it was kind of voot and then voot of the leg. And that was basically it. I cannot describe how to make pants because they're three-dimensional and it doesn't work in my head. So. The other dress I got from an op shop was this cute sunflower dress. I am obsessed with sunflowers at the moment, so I absolutely love this dress. Except for the 3 problems with it. The first is that it's a couple of sizes too big for me. The second is that it's a little too short for my comfort. And the third was this crisscrossy thing at the back, which would mean that I would have to go braless and I'm not at all comfortable with. I don't actually have video footage of the crissy-crossy things at the back because I cut them off before I realised that my camera wasn't working, so you'll just have to believe me that they were there. The first thing I did was cut the seam holding the skirt and the bodice together. For the zip at the side of the dress, I unpicked it from the skirt and left it attached to the bodice. Also, I was bird sitting at the time and she was trying to help. On the side of the skirt, where there would not be a zip, I unpicked the seam of the skirt. Not completely, just, you know, a hand width, just in case. Because, you know, if you're gonna make clothing that's gonna suit you, you might as well add things that you like, for example, a pocket. To make a pocket, I found 2 scraps of white sheet, pinned them together so they wouldn't move, and drew a large pocket shape. The sticking out straight part is so that the pocket can be folded into itself so that it sits better. To attach it to the skirt, I had the skirt inside out and the pocket with the stitching on the inside of it. I folded those straight parts of the pocket over and pinned them to the opening of the skirt and then sewed it in place. I found doing the sewing by hand was the easiest option because I couldn't figure out how to get the sewing machine in there. Once it was sewn on, the skirt could be flipped the right way out and the pocket pushed back in to make it all sit perfectly. The next problem to tackle was the length. Now ordinarily I totally couldn't hear you screaming, but why did you just get it if it wasn't the correct length? Because I like sunflowers and I knew that I could fix this, and I like sunflowers, okay? They're pretty and they're tall like me. Now there were a couple of options that I could have used to fix the length of it. One option would have been to add like a ruffle around the edge of the hem at the bottom of the skirt, but that didn't really match the vibe of the entire dress in my opinion, and I think that also suits like longer skirts better. Another option I could have done was one that I imagine many other people would have considered, which was to make the dress into a matching 2-piece with a skirt and a crop top, but that would still be uncomfortable for me because I don't like having my belly on show, so that's a no. The actual solution that I came up with was to add a waistband to the skirt, which is why I trimmed it from the bodice. I guess I should have explained that part earlier, but here it is here. I'm going to add a waistband around the middle of the dress to make the skirt seem longer. And when I'd come up with that idea, I realized that I needed to come up with how I was going to have the waistband, as in its color. I needed to decide if I wanted it to be a block color or similar to the rest of the dress. So I could have gone with just plain white or perhaps that orange, but I didn't have the same orange as the dress. So I did what any sane person would do and painted some white fabric to match the rest of the dress. I decided to copy the design of the skirt and put it on the waistband. I copied the flower design from the skirt as best I could onto tracing paper and then used a transfer pencil, the kind that you can draw onto baking paper and then iron down onto fabric and it kind of transfers. I used that pencil to draw the sunflowers onto white fabric, and honestly, painting it took me a couple of goes. I just couldn't quite get that particular orange right because it wasn't fluoro, but it wasn't yellow, and it's not quite orange, so I had to mix all sorts of different colours together to make it the correct orange. In my successful attempt, I laid the newer fabric over previously painted fabric where the flowers had come out too pale of an orange, and painted the flowers and leaves with fabric paint, and then ironed them to hold them in place. Back to the bodice. As I mentioned, there was a criss-crossy thing, but I cut them off. I then pulled the sides where the crisscrosses used to be together and sewed them in place. I completely recognise how fortunate I was that it still fitted me when I pulled it in like that, but if it hadn't been able to fit me, I think I could have just used a piece of waistband fabric to make it work. With the waistband fabric painted, I could go about attaching it, but first I put in some plain white fabric behind it to make the whole thing more opaque. I sewed those two pieces together to make things easier. Once the back was all patched up, it was time to do the midriff section. So I've decided I'm going to pin it like this, so that it's just the white side, and then I'll fold it down and it'll be like that. Once I'd sewn the waistband onto the bodice, I figured out where I needed the skirt to fall on my legs. And fortunately, the band was a bit wider than I needed it to be. I marked where I would need to cut the waistband and attach the skirt. First I sewed a gathering thread along the top part of the skirt. I think I showed you how to do that in the peasant blouse, but it's basically long stitches and you carefully move the fabric along it to bunch it up. I always bunch the fabric more than it needs to be because it's way easier to pull it back out than it is to bunch it up to make it fit. I then matched the skirt to the waistband upside down and then sewed it together and flipped it the right way out, and here's the final result. And then that's it. I hope you learnt something. I hope that you try this yourself. If you ever buy clothing online and it's not exactly how you wanted it to be, you now have a few little tips of how to fix it. If you want to see something similar to this again, of course, leave a comment. I like comments. I always get so happy. By the way, thank you so much for the extra 60 subscribers since the last time I mentioned this. Oh my gosh. Hello, 60 new people, that's amazing. By the way, I get so happy when someone leaves a comment or sends me a little message, it just makes my whole day. So thank you so much. Thank you for visiting my magical little corner, and I will see you next time. Bye!